Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. We are going to be going through web hosting, domains and DNS today and what they are and some of the benefits of them. My name is Martin. I am the Technical Support Manager here at SMS. And just before we start today's webinar, just going to have a brief discussion just about the SMS themselves. We are a gold partner specialising in providing cloud services to the mid-market and SME sector. We are been established for well over 15 years now with a portfolio of over 4,500 clients, which MS is continuing to grow. We are ISO 9001 and 27001 certified, and all the support we provide is 24/7, 365 days of the year to all our customers for all the services that we provide. All our staff are UK based, and we are here to help you get the most out of services such as your Microsoft 365 and modern workplace. So we're going to be discussing obviously web hosting, domains and DNS today. So we're just going to start with discussing what a domain name basically is for you people out there that aren't aware of what one is. They may have heard of one, but they weren't quite sure what that was. So this is just going to be a quick overview of what a domain is. So a domain is basically a unique address, easy to remember address that you can use to access things like websites, and it's also used for other services such as email. They can come in a variety of extensions, and these are basically the .co.uk part of the domain, or .com or .net. That bit is referred to as the extension. And the beauty of having a domain name is when you purchase one, you buy it on either a yearly basis or you can buy multi-year basis, depending on the domain that you want. Typically, you can buy domains up to 10 years, and then effectively you've got that domain name for that 10-year period. There's several benefits to having a domain. The first one is going to be reliability. You're going to get that professional appearance to prospective clients and customers because you're going to own that domain, and it's going to say you have a website on it, for example. It's going to look professional to the outside world, and you're going to get that brand identity because you're going to be able to build the trust with your website and online presence. So when you market your business, you can say, well, you can get further details from our website. Here is our web address. So you're going to get that sort of trust and that brand identity there. That falls into memorability. You need to have something that's going to be easy to remember because by doing that, that basically means that people aren't going to forget it. The beauty of having a domain as well is you can have personalized emails, so you can have anything at your domain. So you can actually make yourself look bigger. So say you're a one-person company, you can make yourself look like a multinational by having several email addresses for different departments, even though it's only yourself that's running a company. You can also have your first dot last name, for example, at your domain, and it just makes it look good from an outbound point of view. When people look up the company, they can actually see that there's different departments for different areas of the business. You have absolute control, so you have control of your business identity, because once you register that domain name, no one can take it from you. That you have that domain for the period of time that you purchased it for, so you can control your identity. You also get access to the physical domain as well, and we're going to be discussing DNS shortly, but you will get control with the DNS as well, so you have that absolute control over the actual domain itself. Now, SEO, I'm by no means an expert in this area. But this is purely for search engine results and optimization. So it's search engine optimization is what it stands for. This is where you can basically get your Google rankings up. So when people search for keywords, they can find your website on Google, for example. And then there's renewal, and there's obviously the option for terms. Like I was saying, you can register it for a year. Some domains are 2 years, and then there's you can register up to 10 on most domains. So you do have that flexibility. You might decide that, well, I want to buy a .co.uk domain, but I don't want to have to renew it every year. I want to buy it for 10 years up front. Well, that's what you can do. Obviously, it would be pricey because obviously you're effectively buying it for a period of time. But a lot of people, a lot of big businesses, especially, do that. Myself, I have some domains, and I always tend to register mine for around 9 years, just so I've got control of it, and then I don't forget to renew it. However, auto renewal is normally enabled on most domains anyway, so every year it'll just renew regardless. So these are some of the types of domains that you can get. So co.uk, .com, UK, net, org, EU, and email. These are just some of the types of domains that are out there. There is thousands of different types of domain extensions. These are just some of the common ones generally using. A few years back, they decided they were going to issue more domain extensions because what was happening was it was getting difficult for people to get the domain they wanted because obviously it was already registered. So they decided to release a load of industry-specific domains and other categories of domains. So, for example, they had .agency now. So if you're a design agency, you can have your business .agency. They have ones for construction. They have ones for, you can even get country ones, but they're mainly restricted to the country that you're in. So you'd have to have a postal address in that country to get one of them. But they have a various amount of domains, and there is thousands of them. More than I could discuss today, because there's literally thousands of them that you can purchase. Some you can get through ourselves. Some you can't. You have to go through other places because they're specifically only allowed to be registered at certain registrars. But typically, there is literally thousands of them out there. So you can really brand your business to what it actually is. So if you're a construction company, you can buy .construction if you wanted to, or there's .build. If you're going to be, if you wanted a website that just had sales items on it, you could get .sale, for example. So there is them options available to you. So we're now just going to go into DNS. Now, DNS is a very broad topic, and it has many layers to it. This is by no means a deep dive into DNS because, well, for a start, I think we don't have enough time to actually go into it in depth. This is more than just an overview of what DNS is, why you need to use it, and how it basically all works. So the domain name system, or DNS as it's referred to, it's just a system where computers and services basically are connected to the internet, and how they can resolve to an IP address. So in basic terms, it's literally like a phone book. I mean, I know not many people use phone books these days, but it's like a phone book. You need to find a number for a company or a person. You get the phone book and you basically look up their name in that phone book, and that would give you their telephone number so you could contact them. Well, DNS works very much like that. So basically, you go into your browser, you type in your company domain name, so company.com. Now, to the computer world, it can't understand that, so it needs something to convert that into a number, and that's what DNS does. It converts that human readable domain. So, as an example on screen, smshelp.co.uk, and it converts it into an IP of 88.151.130.99. So then it knows that website for that domain is on that IP, and it can understand it. Typically, you can actually go to any website as long as you know the specific IP, and as long as it's not on certain things like shared hosts and things like that. You can actually put the IP in, and it will actually load. So you can actually go to Google with an IP address, and it will load. However, people don't remember these numbers because there's that many of them. There's like millions of them. So basically, what they've done is you basically have a domain, and you have DNS, and DNS will then allow you to convert that to resolve your website. It is also used for other things as well. So there's other services such as email that it's used for. That it's used for certain telephony services like Teams. Teams uses DNS to make it work properly and make it discoverable, things like that. So effectively, for the people out there that don't really understand it, that's fine. That's not a problem. But if anyone ever mentions it, or you're just wondering what it might be, just think of it as a phone book where you go to find a specific number. So then what we'd have is you'd fall into what's known as DNS records. Now, as part of DNS, there's a thing they have things called records. Now, there is quite a lot of different types of records that are out there. However, I'm only going to be discussing the most common ones that people use on a day-to-day basis, because there's some that you'll never need to use or never need to know about. So basically, when you create DNS records, that's inside what's known as a zone. And the zone is a bit like a database that holds a list of records on your domain on what services it needs to work. So, for example, your website, in order for a website to work, you need an A record in order for that to work. So inside this zone or this database, there will be a list of different records, and there'll be A records. And them A records will point to an IP address, which will make your website work. Now, the quad A record is pretty much the same as an A record, but it's for a new generation of IP addresses called IPv6. Now, that is a very in-depth topic, but all it is basically that they've run out of IPv4 addresses, so they've had to come up with a new way of doing it. and that's what Quad A records are for. It's this new IPv6, so that's basically what one of them is. Generally, the majority of people still use normal A records. I have seen a few Quad A records around, but you don't see as many at the moment, but that will probably change in the coming years. Now, a CNAME record is basically a host name to a name. Now, if you think about it in sort of like layman's terms, is that when you go to a website, some people will type in www and then the domain. Now, www isn't part of your domain name. It's actually a host name in its own right. So in order for your website to work, you'd have to have something that host name points to. So you can use what's known as a CNAME record to do that. And that basically means that when you set up your DNS, you'd select a CNAME record, you type the host name as www, and then you point it to company.com, for example. Now, I don't want to confuse things, but you can actually do that with an A record as well. But in this scenario, think of it as if you have www, you can actually point that to your domain to make that work. So when people go to www, it will just load the website. Now, CNAME records are used for a multiple of different things, not just websites. So, for example, if you're on Office 365, they have five CNAME records, and they have an additional 2 CNAME records for advanced security on email. So, effectively, it's not just used for websites; it's used for online services. Like I say, 365 uses 2 for Teams to work and make it discoverable, and basically it has 1 for email to work properly. It has 2 for mobile management, if you're going to use that as an example. So it's used for different things. But if you think about it in the layman's terms, that it is literally just a name to a name, basically. It points one name to your domain name, basically. So the next one's going to be an MX record. So an MX record is a mail exchanger record. And what that basically is without that, your email won't work. So basically, that is just a reference point on your domain to tell the outside world where to route mail to. So when you send an email, it will do a query against your DNS, and it will say, basically, where is your mail server located? And then what it will do is it will look for an MX record, and it will say, my MX record is simply mailsolutions.com. So then it will basically say, well, I'm going to route mail to that address. And then once it gets delivered to that address, it's up to the mail server to deal with it. So basically, that is all an MX record does. An SRV record are becoming a bit less uncommon now. They are basically a service record, and what they do is they're used for things like telephony systems a lot of the time, or communication systems. Previous exchange platforms use them for what's known as auto discovery, which is a way of configuring Outlook with your domain. But nowadays they're not widely used. 365 does use them though. It uses 2 for Skype services or stroke team services, basically. But they're just more of a service on your domain to make that work, basically. And finally, a text record, that is basically just a label on your domain. So this can be used for several purposes. One of the purposes it's used for is domain verification. So if you're, for example, if you are going on to 365, Microsoft require you to verify your domain in order to say, I own this domain, because it just stops you adding things like google.com. So basically, you would put your domain on 365, and then it would say, you need to add a text verification record to say that you own this domain. So then basically what you do is you go into your DNS and you'd add a text record for MS equals MS, and there's a number, and then that would then verify the domain. Now, there's several providers out there for different services, even web services that are out there. There's a variety of services that now require domain verification, not just email, and that is what they'll ask you to do. Now, there is other ways to do domain verification, like with an MX record, but you don't need to be concerned about that, because typically the default option is always a text record, so you don't need to worry about that. But generally, that is what a text record's for. The other purpose it's used for is what's known as SPF. Now, this is it can get quite technical. SPF is Sender Policy Framework, and all you need to think about that SPF records do is, if you have one, it prevents spam. That's basically what they're designed for. It's just a list of host names and servers that basically tells the outside world what domains can send email on its behalf. So basically, that is all the SPF does. It is a spam prevention system that you put in place, and there's different things that you can do with it. and we always highly recommend that you add one. But to make it not too complicated, like you say, just think about it. If anyone says SPF, that is just it's a spam prevention technology. That's all. So you probably may wonder now. Well, I've got my domain. I understand a little bit about DNS and records. Kind of know what they do. Well, how am I going to control them? Is there a way of managing them? Because obviously we need to add these records somewhere. Well, you have what's known as DNS control, DNS control panel. Generally, most providers have these panels. Now, we use two different types of panels, and I'll just go through them now. We use Enon, which is our domain registrant that we use for all our domain registrations, and we use Office 365. Now, if you're a customer, now this only applies to customers that have their domain registered through SMS. So if your domain is registered through SMS and you're not using any external provider, because we do have some people that use external providers for the DNS. If you're fully registered with SMS and we're managing your domain, then if you're on Hosted Exchange 2013 or you're using Office 365 with FutureSpam / UltraVault, which is our online anti-spam and vault service, then your DNS will be held with Enon, which you have a panel that you can access. Now, if you currently don't have access to that, open a ticket with support and we will give you the access details to get onto it to manage your own DNS, and that we are managed 24 hours a day. So the next one would be 365. So if you're with 365 with us and you don't have FutureSpam, it's just literally 365 and that's it, then your DNS will be managed in there. Now, if you log into the Office 365 admin portal where the DNS is managed, then basically what would happen is you'd be able to manage the DNS in there. Now, if you see any errors in there, such as possible domain error or something like that, for example, then that doesn't necessarily mean there's a problem with the domain. It could mean two things. It could mean that you've got FutureSpam, which it will display that when that happens, because 365 doesn't allow you to add multiple MX records. But it will still work and there's nothing to worry about and it'll just be fine. Or your zone hasn't yet been copied over to 365, for example. So they're the sort of control panels, and on screen, it's just like a quick snippet of what they actually look like. The first one is Enon, the second one is what 365 looks like. So now we've discussed DNS, we're going to go into the last section of this webinar, which is going to be about basically web hosting. So what is web hosting? Well, web hosting is basically a service hosted in the cloud on a server that allows you to host your own website, blog, e-commerce page, or just an online presence. It might just be one page. Now, features of having web hosting is the first one is WordPress. Now, for people out there that are not sure what WordPress is, WordPress was started several years ago as a blogging engine, basically. And all that basically means is it was an out-of-the-box website that you could put online and use it as a blogging site. So you could basically create it and you could then post stuff to it and people could comment on it, basically. And you could put, images on it, video, that kind of thing. Now it's got quite advanced over the years. It's early days, and it's a lot more rich and easier to use nowadays than it ever was. And there is millions of plugins available for it. There's millions of themes available for it, and you can choose how you want it to look. I mean, these days as well, you can actually make it look like a website, not a blogging site. So you can actually, a lot of companies now, their website is now on WordPress. You can't tell it's on WordPress. It just looks like it's a website that's actually been physically built, from scratch, but it's actually running WordPress as the engine. And it is a very, very good program. Now, generally, the way that you would install it would be what's known as one-click install. And through certain web panels, which we're going to be discussing shortly, you can basically just go into it. You click on WordPress. It usually asks you what you want to call the site, a couple of other details, and you click install. 5 minutes later, the site's live. That's how fast it is. Years ago, that wasn't the case. You had to download the files, you had to download a config file, populate the config file, upload all them files, create a database, link the database, and then basically run an install file. And it used to take, for people that weren't too tech savvy, it used to take quite a while, and it didn't always work first time as well. You had to change permissions and stuff. Nowadays, that's all gone, and you have panels in place now that do all that for you, so it's dead easy to use, and you can really make a very good website. And like I say, there's themes available. There's plugins available. There's obviously free and paid for themes and plugins available, and you can just install them as well, which is and you can make it look really good. Now, FTP on the other hand is just a way of uploading files to file transfer protocol. This is just a way of say you have You buy some hosting with us. You have a web person that says, "I'm building your site, but I need FTP details." And like, "What?" You'd be like, "What are they?" So FTP details are basically just usually a host name, which is an IP address, a username and a password. You give them to the web person. They put them details in. They upload your website, and it will be live. That's basically all FTP does. SSL is secure socket layer, which is basically a certificate for your website. Now, with all our hosting packages, we provide a free Let's Encrypt certificate, which is basically perfect for pretty much any website to a degree. They get renewed automatically every 3 months. When you first enable them, it does actually to add a text record to DNS to verify. So this is another one to verify that you own that domain. So this is another service that uses that verification system. And then basically, once that's verified, that's it basically live. It then does work basically. Now, we do sell SSL certificates, but these are generally for people that want some sort of protection, insurance protection on their site, basically, and in monetary terms. So you get covered for a certain amount of money via the SSL provider, basically by the certificate provider. So that's generally what they're for. They're really for sites that have generated high volumes of money. But the Let's Encrypt one is generally fine for most low-key sites, basic sites for companies, that kind of thing. It's transferring some, personal like contact forms. It's perfectly fine for that. It just works basically. PHP is a scripting language. Basically, very, very common. A lot of websites are built on PHP. With our panels, you can change the version that you're running because some people, the coding that you use might not be compatible with newer versions. So there is an option to change the version that you're running. MySQL and MS SQL, these are basically just databases that you can actually have on your site. WordPress uses a database in order for it to function, but you might have a website built by someone that uses a database to hold data or something like that, for example. So you have the option to create your own. MySQL is available on Linux, and both of them are available on Windows. File Manager is an online, think of it like an online FTP in a way. It looks very much like Windows Explorer. It allows you to edit files actually live online through an editor. It allows you to delete files, upload files, move files, copy files, create folders. You can zip files up to make like a backup in a way as well. It is very useful. It's the one I personally use myself. I find it a lot easier to use, and then having to have an FTP client to do it, I just find it a lot faster. And the last point is URL forwarding. All that basically is say you've got two domains. You've got company.com and company.co.uk. Your website's at company.com, but you want people that go to company.co.uk to be redirected to company.com. So that's when URL forwarding would come in. You'd add that to your hosting, and you'd say when you go to .co.uk, I want all traffic to be forwarded to .com, and that's basically what that does. Dead simple to set up. It takes a matter of seconds to set that up. The types of web hosting. So we offer two types of hosting: Linux and Windows. Linux generally is the most popular and recommended option, as it generally runs pretty much everything bar from anything Windows related. It's the most stablest to run certain scripting languages, and with WordPress it just works basically. It's pretty incredible, the Linux version. Windows, however, not as popular. However, there is people out there, and we are aware of people out there that do have web applications that are specifically built for Windows OSs, such as things that run MS SQL, where they need that, or some sort of .NET framework where they need a Windows platform to run it. And that's perfectly fine. We do have the Windows option available to them. Just need to make you aware, if you're going to run WordPress on Windows, it does work fine. However, some plugins and that aren't fully compatible with Windows. You might have a few issues there. So if your aim is to have a WordPress site, go for Linux, because it will just work. There won't be any issues there. So then we go on to Presence Builder. Now, there's a lot of site builders out there these days. There's many websites out there where you can basically pay so much, and the website, you just build it yourself. Presence Builder is exactly the same as that, but it comes part of your hosting package. So it makes it a very good cost-effective solution, because you're getting two for one, really. You're getting hosting and a builder. Whereas a lot of the online builders you get nowadays, you don't really get hosting as such. It's just like a builder. So what Presence Builder allows you to do is create a professional looking website without any knowledge on HTML, web design, or anything. So, and then all you do is you go into the wizard, you pick your theme for your type of business, because it will give you a load of options for different business sectors. You select your color, your templates, etc. You add the text, all the pages you want, and then click publish. That's basically it. Your site's done. You could do that in a matter of, to make it look, how you want. Probably do that in a matter of a few hours, if that. So the great thing with Presence Builder is you can create web pages with it. You can add a wide variety of content, text, images, scripts. You can really customize it with putting things like website names, keywords, icons, have icons. You can make it look how you want it to look. And it is a drag and drop type of situation where you drag and drop elements onto a page and then put the details in that you want it to have on it, whether it's a graphic or text or whatever. So just before we wrap up today, I'm just going to go over what the web hosting CP is. So web hosting CP is basically the web hosting control panel. And what this basically is how you manage your web hosting. Now, we use Plesk, and there are several other vendors out there that do control panels for the web, but Plesk is highly rated. It's very easy to use. It has a Windows-like look of it, and it is very feature-rich, and I'd say it's easy to use. So it's laid out in a way that it's easy to understand. You can install WordPress from here. You can access your FTP from here. File Explorer or File Manager rather. You can access other applications. There's not as many these days as there used to be, but for example, there is an open source ticket system that you can install if you really want to. You need a ticket system, for example, and you can manage things like your website statistics when you turn them on. So you can see who's going to your website, there's a bit of statistics there. SEO management's in there. It's got everything that you need to manage your site. And when you sign up with us, you will get these login details, so you'll be able to access it and start building your site, basically. So I'm just going to finish and conclude today's webinar. So if you need to contact us, if you want to buy web hosting, or you're not sure if you've got it, or you just need some sort of sales answers, basically, call our sales team on 01925 818 448, and one of them will be able to assist you and get anything you need to get sorted out. But if you're unsure about your web hosting, say you have web hosting, or say you have a domain, for example, or you have DNS, and you're just unsure about stuff on a technical nature, just then reach out to support on 01925 818 252, and they will be able to assist you with that. The website is simplymailsolutions.com. You can register domains through here and by hosting. You can also open tickets via support through there, and we do have a knowledge base on everything to do with web and domains, so you can see how things work. And but if there's nothing in there, if you can't find the answer you're looking for, then do reach out to us. Please follow us on socials. You'll have everything on there, from when the next webinar is to future products, some feedback that we get from customers that we like to share, and just future further updates on what's going on with SMS as a business. Webinar and YouTube channel can be found at simplymailsolutions.com/webinars, and you can register for the future webinars on there when you have them available, and you can look at past webinars as well. So I'm just going to conclude. I would like to thank everyone for watching today. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you on the next one.